The human fascination with figures in the public eye has led to a variety of myths. Misconceptions and legends have been attributed to celebrities, often without even a hint of credibility. For whatever reason, this phenomenon appears to be even more prevalent when it comes to those in the music industry, and has existed ever since the art form moved out of the opera houses and into everyday life. Part of the reasons why these often wacky theories gain so much traction is that people find it fun to speculate when it comes to the topic of the rich and famous. I mean, even when the Beatles were enjoying their greatest critical successes towards the latter half of the 1960s, people genuinely believing that Paul McCartney had died and had somehow been immediately replaced by an identical double. Despite most people seeing through Paul is dead, pervasive myths about some of the biggest stars in the music business are showing no signs of dying down in the modern day, despite the fact that many of these folk tales don't stand up to the slightest bit of scrutiny. But still, with people continuing to retell these stories, the spread of these myths have shown no sign of slowing down. I am Kirsten from WhatCulture Music, and these are 10 false music facts you probably believe. Number 10. Taylor Swift doesn't have a belly button. One of the oddest myths in all of popular music, the allegation that Taylor Swift was born without a belly button is one of the strangest and, most frankly, most hilarious conspiracy theories that have somehow gained traction in the mainstream. The theory originates from a New York Mag article that featured several photos of Swift exposing her midriff without any sign of an umbilicus. As the gossip media jumped on the bandwagon, publishing even more photos of the American singer failing to display her navel, the speculation apparently reached fever pitch, leading a journalist to actually ask Swift if she has a navel, prompting her to reply, "I don't like showing my belly button. When you start showing your belly button, then you're really committing to the midriff thing. I only partially commit to the midriff thing. You're only seeing lower rib cage. I don't want people to know if I have one or not." Unfortunately, Swift would ultimately put an end to the speculators' fun with a 2015 Instagram post showing she did, in fact, have a belly button. However, that post has since been deleted, so maybe the legend does live on after all. Number 9. Yoko Ono broke up the Beatles. One of the most commonly repeated myths in all of popular music is that conceptual artist and occasional background screamer Yoko Ono was the primary face in the breakup in the most successful band of all time. Despite all of the members of the Fab Four retroactively asserting that this wasn't the case, the myth persists as a warning of what happens when an outside influence poisons a creative process. The truth is, after a decade of spending an ungodly amount of time together, John, Paul, George and Ringo had simply started to grow apart. No longer were they wide-eyed novices looking for a way into the burgeoning rock and roll market. The Beatles by this time were adults with lives and aspirations entirely divorced from the group. Now, that isn't to say that Ono's ever-presence wasn't an issue in the final years of the iconic group's history, but pinning the breakup entirely on an outsider completely ignores the brewing resentment that had been growing between the Beatles for some time. Number 8. Lady Gaga is a hermaphrodite. When Lady Gaga appeared seemingly out of nowhere into the mainstream with her album The Fame in 2008, the American singer raised more than a few eyebrows across the world with her outlandish fashion sense and unique persona. In the midst of Gaga's celebrated debut album, rumours began to circulate that the often androgynous style of the singer was deliberate, and a nod to the fact that she was actually a hermaphrodite, possessing both male and female genitals. The speculation reached its peak in 2009 when the artist appeared at the legendary Glastonbury Festival while wearing a tight dress that apparently served to confirm the rumours surrounding the possibility of Gaga being intersex. Despite much of the origin of the legend appearing on clearly satirical websites, the conjecture persisted during the singer's early years in the mainstream, prompting several interviews to point-blank ask the question. In a 2009 interview with Barbara Walters, Gaga refuted the rumours and claimed that the speculation doesn't actually bother her. No, not really. At first it was very strange and everyone sort of said, "That's really quite a story." But in a sense, I portray myself in a very androgynous way, and I love androgyny. Number 7. Marilyn Manson got his ribs removed to perform autofellatio. A schoolyard rumour that people of a certain age are bound to have heard in one form or another states that shock rocker Marilyn Manson had surgery to remove his bottom 2 pairs of ribs in order to perform fellatio on himself. Following his rise to prominence in the early 90s as the frontman of the band of the same name, Manson earned a reputation as a pop culture icon for his shocking artistic statements, leading to a backlash against him in conservative media. However, despite his reputation as one of the most shocking celebrities of his generation, one of the most famous persisting myths about Manson simply isn't true. Presumably unbeknownst to those who continue to spread the legend for at least a decade after, on school playgrounds, Manson had already put this tall tale to bed. In his 1998 autobiography, The Long Hard Road Out of Hell, he wrote, "If I really got my ribs removed, I would have been busy sucking my own dick on the Wonder Years instead of chasing Winnie Cooper." This is a reference to another prevalent myth about the rock royalty, alleging that he starred in the 80s sitcom The Wonder Years. That, alas, also isn't true. Number 6. Keith Richards once had a complete blood transfusion to kick a drug habit. The exploits of the Rolling Stones guitarist Keith Richards are legendary at this point, so it's not surprising that there have been a few myths attributed to Richards that have gone unchecked over the years. It's no secret in the music industry that Richards has battled some sizable demons in grappling with his drug addiction, particularly during his peak in the 1970s. The Stones guitarist's struggles with his addiction to heroin during the decade are well documented, with a particularly notable arrest in Canada for possession of the opioid in 1977 that nearly landed him 7 years in prison. With all this in mind, it shouldn't come as a surprise that several myths surrounding Keith's life have emerged from some of the turbulent times of his life. One of the most persistent of these legends asserts that Richard travelled to Switzerland to have a full blood transfusion in 1973 in order to drain his body of all the bad blood. As it turns out, Richard did actually travel to Switzerland to have some kind of operation. It did not prove to be the end of the rock icon's time caught inside the jaws of addiction. Number 5. Keith Moon drove a car into a swimming pool. Much like his aforementioned rock star namesake, Keith Moon was so notorious for his wild and unpredictable behaviour that it's difficult to definitely draw the line between truth and myth. Before his untimely death, aged just 32 in 1978, Moon had developed a reputation as the embodiment of the stereotypical rock star that in the years since has often threatened to overshadow his talent beyond the drum kit. One of the most notorious incidents attributed to the late percussionist alleges that after a night of characteristic excess was crescendoed with Moon driving his brand new car, either a Rolls-Royce or a Lincoln Continental, sources differ, into the swimming pool of a Holiday Inn in Flint, Michigan. Moon even seems to have suggested in an interview prior to his death that this was the case, though Who bandmate Pete Townsend later confirmed that this was a myth formed from the combination of two separate truths. In one, he left the handbrake off and the car rolled into a pool, which was under construction and waterless. In the other, he charged a new car to the band who refused to foot the bill. So Moon drove it into a muddy pond in his garden and called the dealer to pick it up. Number 4. Avril Lavigne died in 2003. Many of you reading this will be well aware of the Paul is dead conspiracy. What began as a simple hoax eventually evolved into a full-blown retroactive search for proof, which superfans combining through album notes, lyrics and interviews trying to find a shred of evidence of the death of the original Paul McCartney. Well, as it turns out, when it comes to groups of fans joining together to conspiratorially discuss the possibility of their favourite artist's death, lightning really does strike twice. The rumour that Canadian pop rocker Avril Lavigne had died and been replaced by a lookalike had done the rounds across the internet for years before becoming popularised in a series of tweets in 2017. The now deleted thread alleged that Lavigne had been replaced by a body double named Melissa after becoming disillusioned with fame and even possibly dying sometime between 2002 and 2004. Unfortunately for fans hoping to have happened upon a real-life conspiracy, the theory just isn't true. Apart from the fact that the entire thing hedges on some pretty unsubstantial evidence, haven't you noticed that she used to wear trousers and now she wears dresses? But a blog later appeared from an anonymous fan who claimed to have started the rumour solely to prove how easily misinformation can spread online. Number 3. Cass Elliot died eating a ham sandwich. Perhaps now best known for her vocals on the Mamas and Papas iconic 1965 cover of California Dreamin', Cass Elliot is a bona fide legend in the music industry for her impressive range and distinctive, powerful voice. Unfortunately for Elliot, her career would be marred by repeatedly derogatory comments about her weight. This stigma followed Elliott all the way to her tragic death, aged 32 in 1974, in the very same room that fellow list entrant Keith Moon would also pass away in 4 years later. In the years prior to her death, Elliott had been suffering from an addiction to opiates that would cause a massive deterioration in the singer's health. Following her passing, an urban legend emerged claiming that Elliott had died whilst eating a ham sandwich, and possibly died from asphyxia as a result. This appears to have emerged when the first doctor to examine her body post-mortem had theorised that Elliott had died of choking on food, when an autopsy would later reveal that she had actually suffered from heart failure. Number 2. Slash play guitar on Black or White. Ever since he rose to prominence as the lead guitarist of Guns N' Roses, Slash has earned a reputation as one of the most iconic guitar players of all time. As well as his tumultuous tenure in the famous group, Slash has also lent his talents to the work of various other artists, but perhaps none more famously than his collaborations with the legendary pop artist Michael Jackson. Slash first joined Jackson in the studio in 1991 during the recording of MJ's 8th album, Dangerous, performing lead guitar duties on the song Give In To Me and also contributing some guitar to the opening skit for the music video of Black or White. But what about the guitar in Black or White itself? The distinctive choppy guitar hook has often been attributed as the work of Slash, presumably because of his playing in the music video, but it's actually American producer Bill Bottrell that performed the song's signature lick. Slash cleared up the confusion in a 2010 interview, stating his opinion on the iconic riff. "I did not play on Black or White. I would never play that." Number 1. Michael Jackson sang on The Simpsons. During the golden age of The Simpsons during the early 90s, the show commanded an impressive grip on not only entertainment on television, but also in the music industry. After generating $750 million in the first year of merchandising, the potential for The Simpsons as a brand quickly became evident, and a music album, The Simpsons Sing the Blues, quickly followed to further commercial success. The first single for the aforementioned record, Do the Bartman, topped the charts in several countries and featured a writing credit from Michael Jackson. Jackson also appeared in the show, appearing in the season 3 opener, Stark Raving Dad, as Leon Kompowski, though due to contractual obligations, the voice actor was credited as John J. Smith. In the years that followed, the show itself made subtle references to the fact that it was, in fact, Jackson that performed the voice of Kompowski. However, Jackson elected not to provide the singing voice of the character, telling Matt Groening that he wanted to fool his brothers with the use of an impersonator, with Kip Lennon of the band Venice instead providing the vocal for the iconic Lisa, It's Your Birthday song performed in the episode. And that's our list. Do you remember any of these rumours? I definitely fell for the Marilyn Manson fellatio rumours when I was in school. If you did too, leave me a comment below and let me know. If you like this video, give it a thumbs up, and if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. But for now, I have been Kirsten from WhatCulture Music, and I'll see you in the next video.